All right. Hello, everyone. So Holly joined us today. I don't know if anybody else will sign in a little bit late or not. I think last week we had somebody sign in a little late, but that's fine. All the week's assignments that everybody turned in came out great. I have some notes on some of them. I had some comments on some comments people left me. I'll try to answer everything as I go through it. I think I understood all the questions and got answers for them, but if not, if I don't answer, like always, just message me next week and just ask me to reiterate. Okay, so since Holly's here, I'm going to start with her first. Or is Holly a guy's name too? I don't know. I'm terrible at that. All right, Holly. Let's go to yourself. All right. So to start, you were talking about the tying a knot was difficult when you made it a very thick knot with a wide fabric. So yeah, that's the main reason I wanted to do the knot. The scarf, it's not like a hard assignment or anything. It's more or less just because it's just getting used to the program. I don't really care about the scarf at all. It's more just understanding how the cloth works with itself. So that's why I find this assignment very important. It's not like it's a hard assignment. It's just you're getting familiar with the program. But first, I'll start off with your pouch, which I didn't really have any feedback on. I tried to look at it and try to find stuff, but I couldn't find much. It looked pretty good. You got the folds nicely. It's tight everywhere, so making a low poly for it for a game model will be easy because there's not too much break in the silhouette, but there's still a lot of folds and shape to it. So actually, I didn't have much comments on this one. I think you know, nice. One overall note that I don't know if I said it in the videos in week 3 or whatever. Either way, whenever I try to make stuff in Marvelous, I try to keep stuff in specific regions throughout the grid on here, just because for my OCD I do it. So if I'm working on that like a hat, I try to put it in the upper left, like hat, headgear. Upper right would be sleeves, shirts, or whatever. Bottom left would be pants, what have you. Bottom right would be accessories. Sometimes it switches around, but I do that more or less so when I import files into other files, at least all the patterns aren't overlaying each other. It still happens, but it's just something I try to do. If you're conscious of it as you're creating stuff and you can move them whenever, it's not a problem. It just saves a little hassle. Yeah. That looks good. That looks good. That looks good. And if you notice, I always view with thickness on there because I find it better to look at. It doesn't really do much. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Pattern view is nice and clean and pretty solid. Actually, one thing I was going to do is render. Let's see if there's any problems. That's good enough. Yeah, it held this form pretty well, so that's good. Balaclava. You and somebody else had similar balaclavas, which are nice. You have this extra detail in here, which isn't just a tight hat. It's actually covering the mouth with a separate cloth, so it's actually pretty nice. It adds more detail than the boring. Again, I actually didn't have much feedback on this one. The biggest feedback I have somebody for the future, and one of the future assignments, one of the assignments that somebody else turned in this time. They didn't get enough folds on the neck, and the idea to the program is trying to get folds. That's the goal because that's what you're using the program for. So you got a lot of nice folds here. The only thing I would comment on is the silhouette. It looks like his neck is very thick. This looks like a very thick balaclava for like a winter kind of element, which is fine. But usually they're a little bit tighter, and that's the only comment. But you have a lot of nice folds here, so I don't want to say don't do it. Usually I also tell people to try to get more folds on the top, but you have nice folds on the neck, so it's nice to have some areas of rest where you have the top, so that actually works out pretty well. Oh, so yeah, this is laying on top. This is more of a note for the next person, one of the assignments I'm going to review. I do like how this overlays this one, just because you can make a quick second mask out of the first one, so you have an alteration. So even in the game industry, you can have two masks done at the same time, and you could just have it saved out easily. It looks good. Here, the only comment is it's the same comment I'm going to give it to somebody else. Having one fold right through the neck is a little odd. This side looks a lot better than this. It's not artistically pleasing. So that's the only reason I would try to avoid that. Yeah, it's pretty good otherwise. Some people, I don't know if I noticed even in this class, usually they have where the seam meets up on the middle, it comes to a sharp point. So I tend to avoid that, but I think everybody had it pretty solid. I just want to point it out just because it does happen. But yeah, that looked very good too. Scarf. Yeah, so I like the idea to change the scarf up instead of just a scarf. You still got to play around with how a knot ties. That's the basic idea. I think the knot I do is more or less just looping it in on itself. It's not actually tying a knot. But I like the idea to this because this is where you got to practice. There's a video I have that I need to share at some point that shows how to do a knot a hacky way, like a very fake way, but it looks really good to get everything pulled together. So yeah, the main reason to this is like when you make this, I like to be able to have it because like if you try too hard to make the knot too tight, it just comes undone. So that's the main point of the assignment, just to understand how the program works. So yeah, looks good though. I like it. And then the shotgun pouch, which this is the one I had some feedback on, but nothing really obtaining to you specifically. It's just in the industry, I had one comment because working at Kojima, we had specific things on this. Yeah, it came out really nice. It looked good. I think you could go a little bit further with detailing, adding maybe, doing the stitch lines and stuff like that. But obviously, you don't have to do it in Marvelous. But you could do it in Marvelous now. Blah blah blah. It's not really a comment towards this. It's just something I just want to point out. So working at Kojima, we were specifically making these kind of vests and stuff and making all these loops. I forget that they had specific names to all this stuff. My friend, he was making a vest once, and he had these. He was just making it. He finished it, and then when Kojima looked at it, or Shinkawa, I forget who exactly. I think it was Kojima. Apparently, the size of these loops. The size of the loops and the distance from one to another changes throughout history, throughout years. So depending on what year you're specifically going for, that's something specific reference you need to go to. So that just keeps in mind for future of anything you do. So if you make something, it might be to a specific year and not to a specific era, and you might be out of sync with what you're trying to convince players to see or people to see the people you're trying to show to. That was really weird because he made it like they were like 2 inches by 1 inch apart, and they were supposed to be 1 inch by 1 inch apart. And yeah, he had to redo it, and it sucked because he made it to the very end, and then he realized after showing it Kojima because we were in LA. So yeah, but yeah, it's just things to keep in mind as an artist. You just do these things and you don't always think about all the history towards it or the reasoning why. But yeah, it wasn't anything towards this really. It was just overall. So yeah, that looks good. And now we have Kevin joining. So I'll review Kevin's next. I think I just finished yours, Holly. Yeah. Yeah, and unfreeze. You want to see it again? Close that. Everything else is good. Yeah, no problem. Hope you had fun. And next week, you should even have more fun. It's actually on the avatar, clothing on the character, and I'll talk about that at the very end. You can stick around. It's up to you. I'm not going to make you stay, but it'll be recorded either way. So if you're there, cool. If you have questions, shoot them out as they go. Cool. I think that answers everything in you. And then Kevin's here. Kevin, I already started, so hello. If you want to go back and rewatch that first 10 minutes, feel free. It's just, I have about 5 minutes per student. I usually go longer on the first few, usually the people that show up, just because it covers a lot of the stuff that other students have done. I'm just looking at Kevin. All right. Yeah. You have Kevin. You have Matt. You download the file uploaded to the third week. Oh, I could download that. I saw week 3. I just didn't download that one. Yeah, I could download it. Slow me down a tad bit. Kevin, yeah. Mask. Go to your mask first. I think your stuff looked really great though. Sorry, now I'm gonna get that file into your folder. Yeah, this is stuff I try to do beforehand. Replace the files. Control open. Let me reopen the file. Mask. Delete that. All right, cool. So yeah, when I was going over the Holly stuff, yours and her mask were pretty similar just by how it was set up. It had a nice split in it. She actually had 2 layers, the top, the base balaclava, and there was one going around the mouth. It's kind of similar to this, not exact, but it's nice. It came out really nice because you got all the folds up here that read pretty well, and the folds on the back of the head and here. The only comment I have, even though it's kind of like that in there, is trying to keep the silhouette of the neck a little bit closer, just because for a character, you don't want it to just his face merge into his body, unless that is intentional for the silhouette. So this, instead of it folding sideways, maybe I try to fold it back, just to get a little bit more silhouette there. These purple lines, I'm not too familiar with. I don't know if these are the tracking lines for the avatar for the newest Marvelous, but I never use them, so I don't know much about them. But yeah, it looks like you did a pretty good job. I don't see anything else besides some silhouette change. So this is usually the stuff when I talk about like the peaks on stuff right here on the bottom and then right here. I try to clean that up so it doesn't come to a peak. I would try to make it nice and smooth. Oh, it left the purple lines when you merge it. That's weird. That might be a new feature they added. I'm surprised. No. There's also tracking lines I looked up on Marvelous site. There's something new they added in this latest version or the version before. Tracking actually is really useful. I never used it, but actually watching the video and seeing how it works is actually pretty cool. It's basically, so if you want a sleeve stay basically at the wrist, it'll keep it there as it animates in Marvelous in the shoulder. It's kind of cool, and that's what I thought it was. But I guess it's just the seam line merge. I guess they added the color for that. Before it was just stitched together and you just lose it. I guess it's nice that you still see the silhouette shape. But yeah, it looks good. Let me load up what else. You're still in your pouch. So yeah, I looked at this pouch. This actually came out really nice. It looked like the reference. Yeah. Came out nice. Besides the color, I would put a little bit more blue tone into it, just cooler tone. But it came out really nice. I think this is something that is a nice little detail. If you needed to add stuff to your portfolio, it could work on there. If depending on what stage you're in your career. If you're early on, I think it'd be a good piece to show off that you know Marvel, blah blah blah, with other stuff. Obviously, I would just put this up. But I think it came out really nice for doing Marvelous shows that you know the materials and that pretty well. I would just add the new features that I don't go over, but I would add like zippers down here just to pop it out just a little bit more. But it came out really nice. The material does read like leather. Look at this. And you didn't even have to change the fabric at all. So it reads pretty nice like leather. I'm surprised. Usually you have to change the material a little bit. Oh, so you did change the default leather. Oh, maybe I was wrong. No, yeah, I did have leather. Haha, all right. Yeah, so previously in Marvis, they had a leather, a belt leather that I really liked. I don't think they had belt leather now. It was to make stuff very stiff, and I like that for a lot of reasons, and they got rid of it. I don't know if they changed it, and I tried to remake it in the previous version of Marvelous. Like earlier this year, I was messing around, but I couldn't get one that looked like the old leather. But yeah, no, this came out nice. The pattern is fairly clean and easy to read, so yeah. For how simple it is, it came out nice. Control I. I'm trying to remember what I'm gonna do. Ouch. All right, so this is what I didn't have in your files yet because it wasn't included in the first file. Delete this. Okay, so this is the other pouch. I don't think I have much to say about it. It looks nice. I don't have a reference image on if you had reference for it, but it looks good otherwise. Oh, it might have been in the week 3. Did you submit a scarf? I don't see a scarf file. I see a scarf reference. There's the reference image for the pouch. I don't know why it didn't download it. Sorry, I'm on my other screen getting the files. The files are in here. Oh, okay. Yeah, I saw the reference image of it, and I just wasn't sure you forgot to submit it. Oh, this patch came out nice. Oh, Holly, I think on yours, oh crap, I forgot to mention. On yours, Holly, I don't think you ever add the little holes on the left or the right side because I noticed Kevin didn't have it on his either. But this more or less wouldn't have it. But usually military pouches have those little metal holes on the side, on the bottom, on the very bottom, or even on the side. Bigger the pouches, they usually have 2. One pouch, they usually have 1. The reference doesn't have it, so it might actually be on the bottom that you can see. Those are usually added for water or dirt to drain out of it because military people are obviously running through the woods, the dirt, sand, water. So there's all these little drainage holes so that it doesn't just build up in there and carry extra weight. So just if you're going realistic, they usually have that. I just want to point that out. That'd be the only comment also for you, Kevin, on this. But I don't think your reference had it either. But you might not be able to see it. Sometimes they don't all have it, but yeah, that's just one little tidbit that we included on it. And it adds that little chrome hit, so when the light hits it in an engine, it pops it out really nicely. That's why even on the buttons on the back of Kevin's thing, it would be nice to add. But yeah, you can do that after Marvis, obviously. But yeah, so the folds and everything look really nice on here. The flaps are the only thing that feel a little flat, a little sad. I thicken them up a little bit. They're very paper thin. And yeah, that'd be about it. Other than that, the folds read really nicely too. Good job. Kevin, and you didn't have any questions. Cool. Same thing I said to Holly, Kevin. If you can't stay around, don't feel like you have to stay in the lecture. The videos are recorded, obviously, so you can watch them at any time. But I'm just going to go forward and review everybody else's homework, and then I'll talk about week 3 assignment fairly quickly before I end the class. Kevin is done, and 2, 3, 4, 5 people left. I'm going to go over Sabrina's next, just because she only submitted images, and that makes it a little bit easier and quicker to review. Just because I can't really see much. I don't know what the blue plane is, if that's just where the bag is hanging on to. It looks pretty good. I can't tell if this, there's just like a strap or a satchel hanging on top of the leather, or these are just seam lines. But you got the wrinkles on the side, the middle, nice, where it feels like it's tight onto the pouch. But other than that, I can't really see much throughout it. The one problem where in Marvelous, so when I had the ammo pouch and you make a pouch around the ammo canister, so the one technique I usually do after I make it around the pouch is I turn that ammo that I had inside of it, I'll turn into cloth, import it in as a garment, and then I'll simulate that inside the pouch so it feels like there's weight coming down to the pouch, so not everything's hanging from the top. Is actually getting some weight on the bottom. There's different techniques you could do, stuff like that. It just depends on how you want to do it. You could even keep that same pouch in there and just cut it in half. I did it before, where I cut the mesh inside in half, and the top half I leave where it is, so it still keeps the full tension at the top, and then the bottom I import as cloth avatar, so it'll fall down and simulate like weight inside there. There's different ways to hack stuff in there just to give more believability to it, because right now everything is being simulated from gravity from the top. There's not much to say about this, Sabrina. It's fairly simple. You did get the balaclava on there, but you're missing the point of Marvelous is trying to get folds. So the only thing I would say is try to get more folds on the bottom. Make this a little bit longer, make it a little bit wider, thicker, so it's not so tight. When you're in Marvelous, I always recommend going to this view. This shows the tension. So if your cloth is very red, you're not going to get fold because it's so tight, elastic tight on the mesh that it can't make folds. So make sure this is at least green or yellow or orange. You don't want red most of the time, unless you're going skin tight, which in that point case, there's a lot of times you won't even need Marvelous. The scarf looks good. It looks like you got the knot in there. The one comment I always tell everybody, which I remember at some point reviewing people's scarves, for everybody, when you're making a scarf, the assignment was just to make the scarf and play around with Marvelous and understanding how knots tie in Marvelous. But if you're in the game production pipeline, when you're making a scarf, something like this, try to keep in mind how the character is going to move and animate and how the technical artists are going to rig up the scarf. Just because how the arms move upward or downward and side to side, having that scarf in the front is not going to make it easy for them. So usually you try to tie it down the middle or have one hanging on the back middle, more close to the middle and the front middle-ish, just to avoid high animation areas like the shoulders. Oh, there's your pouch. Yeah, I think you have this in. I can't tell if you model the outside piece as is a stitch or if it's actually a panel in here, but it's hard to tell. But yeah, you won't have many folds because of this, which actually like gears better just because you have some tension folds here, which you want in Marvelous. But yeah, good job, Belle. Thank you. All right. Sabrina, you didn't have any questions. I could close yours out. Let me go to, I'm going to jump to Glines. I can't pronounce it, even with you spelling it out. All right. So this was her reference, or his reference, Glines. I am horrible with names. What gender names are. Yes, actually the other file. Okay. So technically both your files are in the same file. This one is just the hood. Why did it load in this time? Fine, right? Loaded fine earlier today. Doesn't have to be. That's fine. Let me start with the first one again. First off the bat, I usually don't use black. It's hard to read any folds, any information. Delete the advertising scene too. Just because that patch was saying it. And you're welcome, Kevin. So the patch with it looks good. It's just hard to read because I don't have an avatar in here, and I don't know if you use the basic avatar or the avatar I included. Let me load up an avatar. Let's see if either of these work. No, the shorter job should not be. No. Might have been the model I supplied too. I know it's not the child. Whatever. It looks good. I think these are stitch lines. Yeah. So it's hard for me to judge what's going on here because I think it's all gets stitched together. You got nice folds here. I like the folds on the hat. I would move the particle distance down next time we submit if I don't have an avatar or don't know exactly which one to use. Just because I would like to see better folds, how this actually reads smoother. But these folds are really nice besides it eating in on itself here. That's why sometimes it's better not to show thickness mode, so you see errors. So when you see black, like a darker side version of it, that's the inside, which is the non-rendered side. So it's eating itself, or it's over clipping into itself. It looks good. The full one. So this is the same hood, just with the scarf added on there. So it's nice that you did a different thing than just a regular scarf too. So yeah, the dark side is always the back side of the mesh. Yeah, it looks good though. I can't tell if you did the knot. I've read your notes and I don't remember what you said. The pinning thing. So for the pinning, when you pull out with the W, I think this is the one you're talking about. When you pull out with W, if you just hold W and just click it again, it goes away. So W to make it and W to undo it. It's the same button. So when you hold W, you click and drag wherever you want it. And when you want it to go away, you could press and hold W again and left click again, and it'll remove it. So that answers the first, but I believe that's what you're asking because you don't want to delete them all at once. Yeah, for the first week, I probably didn't say submit the Marvelous files, and I probably should update that, but it's not a big deal on week 1, so don't worry about that. I'm not too worried about it if you don't submit all the files in the first week. And then for the crystal, next time for yeah. And then you talked about exporting it to ZBrush. So I vaguely know what you're asking. I think I covered this in week 5. And I might talk about it in week 3. But basically, I don't know why that setting was not showing up for you, was blacking out the unweld. But the difference for weld and unweld, I would almost always use weld when I export, and I don't do thickness because I want to do the Marvelous, and I will show in week 5 video on why I don't do thickness and import in ZBrush, because I could create my subdivisions myself instead of in Marvelous where I won't be able to create subdivisions, which is to me is very important for people to understand how to do that. It's very useful. So if you export this, and sometimes you'll see a mesh where it'll be like this, where it won't be touched together. If you export with unweld on, it's going to export exactly like this, where you will have a gap between the mesh. If you export the mesh with weld on, it will weld all the verts together. I think you were asking when you pull in ZBrush and you smooth it, the verts weren't welded, they were just touching each other. One case could be if one side has particle distance at 5 and one side had particle distance of 20. The verts can't line up exactly, so you can't stitch it together. If they are the same particle distance and you export with weld on, I'm not sure if it happens, but if they don't weld together, before you do anything in ZBrush, I would make polygroups out of your meshes. And then in ZBrush, there's an option to weld points, and all the vertexes will weld together. And then when you smooth, it should be welded together so the mesh is all stitched together. I think that answers everything for that. Week 5 will cover it a little bit better, I believe. I think it should answer your questions if you didn't get all that. Yeah. Otherwise, yeah, it looks good. The idea of Marvelous is to get folds and you have a lot of interesting detail going on to get that look. And that's the fun part about Marvelous. So, all right. I think that's everything for you two. Thanks for tuning in and keep it interesting. I like it. And double check everything on here. Yeah, it's all good. Okay, now on to Danny. Danny. No, Danny. Okay, so this was the one I was talking about in the beginning where I had quick notes on. The fold on the neck is very horizontal, very straightforward, and very not natural. It could happen, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't look believable. So I would try to make this a little bit looser. Yeah, so if you view the tension viewport, you'll see how tight the hat is and how loose it's here. So everything's really tight up to a section and it's loose. So you can't get folds here. The only areas you got fold are right where the orange are, and they're very subtle folds. So that would be the first thing I would change on this. Other than that, you got everything nice. It actually holds up around the eyes nicely. A lot of past students, when I first started teaching class, they couldn't line it up with the eyes that well. And we always got those little points in here, but I think we got all that really well. The only thing is, yeah, the tension is a little too tight. I know, unless you're going for like a very tight balaclava, like a ski mask or like a robbing bank kind of idea. It works. You get the folds, the mouth and the ears in there, but the neck is the only thing I still would change, even if it was super tight. I would either remove that line or adjust it. Yeah, so yeah, you did talk about you went for a tighter look, but yeah, I would still try to keep it around the neck. Yeah, so I usually try to leave it on the default gray material, or even just to change the color. I just wouldn't go all out and make it black, the material. You're talking about how it's hard to see anything. So that's the idea. I wouldn't go that dark just because it is very difficult. But if you move the light, it helps. So this is an example. He put the hole on the bottom, of the pouch. So this is where dirt or water would drain out if you're in the military and running around the ground. So it's nice. But I didn't have much feedback on this one. It actually came out really nicely. The strap back here, sometimes I make it a little bit of tension. So either I'd model something in here to make it feel like it's hanging on something, so it's not super tight. Unless your game is really low poly, say for mobile nowadays, this could just get baked on the low poly model. If you don't know what I'm talking about, don't worry, because you're probably not in the game industry and you're not concerned about that. But yeah, it looks good. How do you want to read this? So yeah, I used to have materials I go for specifically in here, where, like I said, leather, they had silk and stuff like that. They changed these. I talk about the D, the R, and the S before for default, real time, real, and I forget what S is standard. But I used to change it a lot, but usually I leave it on default. If I really wanted something, I usually used to default to belt leather, but they got rid of that one. So some of these aren't my favorite, but they do help. It does make it a little bit different throughout the model. I would still use them. I don't, in my class, I will not go over all the details here. I'm still not 100% familiar with all this. I understand the difference from weft and warp. One is the tension of the strings going horizontal and one is going vertical, and you could offset those to give different looks. And then you have all the other options here. If you want to get really technical and make some specific materials, you could change this. I think you can find some materials, some settings online for it, but I wouldn't do any of that. I use Marvelous just to get the nice folds how I want them, and sometimes I'll change the materials just to get thicker folds or really thin, loose folds. That'd be the only thing. The rest I can clean up in Marvel and ZBrush. But yeah, the pouch came out nice. Mostly people have it where you get a little fold down here, so they flick out and stuff. So making a low poly would be hard, but you got it pretty straight, which is nice. I think. Let me look really quick. I think. Yeah. So I can't tell. I can't tell because it'll have the lighting setting. I think this part, the front side, is the back side. So stitching this in here when you export it out, I don't think this would weld nicely just because this is the back side stitching too. So just be careful when you export stuff like this and see what welds to what. And when the last person I was reviewing, we were talking about how to export. It is still kind of tricky sometimes because you can make stuff that doesn't work in 3D programs and it's welded to a backside that doesn't have any geometry. But it looks good. I gotta go a little faster. Scarf, I think was fine. Yeah. So yeah, your scarf was fine. I didn't have anything on this. This is more or less for you guys to mess around with and just understand the program. But yeah, you kept it off the shoulders, which is nice. I just try to avoid this shape. It's just too thick and too big, and it kind of covers the body a little too much for an interesting silhouette or game model. That looks good. Cool. I think I answered everything. If I have time, I'll talk to you about how I do capes and stuff. I'll use the wind feature in Marvelous. Now that was more for posing and sometimes for even final assets, just to give me some life to the asset. But if I have time after this class, which I should, I have 2 more to go through, and then I have, then I could just go over the next week's assignment. All right, Nicholas. I have 1 file from you. I think you said this is your bed from last week. I think I downloaded your file. Yeah, because I downloaded the file. I think this is the only file I downloaded. Yeah. So I assume this is from last week when you did the bed and the pillow. Or I got the wrong file there. But I do have a file from you. Let me open it up. It's fine when you add the Dropbox files or whatever onto the link on your submission, but sometimes I don't always get all the files, or I think I have them all and I didn't get everybody's. Just sorry if for some reason that happens. Just remind me them in comments, and I'll review it next week. Did you have questions? Okay. I think one thing. Oh no, that's somebody else. Okay. Let me double check really quick. Next person. Next person had the thing I have to talk about. But yeah, it seems like you did a good job. Yeah, I agree. It could be a little cleaner in areas. Like this is a little wobbly, and it would be hard to make a low poly model. But I think overall, it looks good for a pouch. Like the back side that would be attached to whatever is a lot of extra space. So I would trim that down to be more tightly fit to the actual size of the pouch. But the folds on the side look great. I would add the detail on the bottom, a hole or something, or on the side, just because that gives it a little pop. Also, just add the strap on the back, which most likely you'll never see, but it's also nice to have that on there if they want to use it as a prop somehow, some reason why you have that detail already added. This would be the concern where if you make this a lot bigger than the asset you're building around, you'll get folds here and it won't look believable when it's attached to, say, a character's belt. But if it's attached to a wall and this is like hanging down, maybe it'll be more believable. But yeah, just watch out for stuff like that. Yeah, it looks pretty good. I see that you bent it here. I guess that gives a little bit more shape you could do. I guess that works. Oh, let's see that. So I don't know if you, I talk about this in week 4, cutting and sewing. But yeah, if you add an internal line, you could cut right there and it'll make the shape of it, which is nice. And technically you copy this and you could undo. And I'll go over this in week 5. And if you paste it, you'll paste an exact shape of that. So that's how you can make this so it stitches on exactly. But week 4 I'll cover that. But I don't know how you made that if you just try to eyeball it. But yeah, it looks good. Let me look at what else you submitted. Just some images. Yeah, you got it a little bit looser, which is nice. This is a little bit looser of a pouch. If you're going for the whole thing, maybe this back wouldn't be so big because it have other stuff attached to it because they're all attached together. So maybe it'll be fine. They are definitely longer, so I think you're right on the length. It's just the width might be off. But yeah, looks good. Thanks for sending that back. Right, that was Nicholas. That's the only thing you had, and then call done. Yeah, if you're sick, don't worry. Just try to get done what you could. I'd rather review something, even if it's a little bit of all the assignments or one assignment. It's whatever you can do. These classes are for you. You guys decide to pay for them and learn from it. So it's all up to you. Don't worry if you're not going to offend me if you don't submit everything. But yeah. All right, I had time with the pouch machine. The same day this February. Okay. So yeah, I'm not sure on the pouch. You are calling. Pouch. I was gonna say the size might have been the reason why, but I think your size isn't off. Sometimes, oh, actually, the size might be. So I thought I'd talk about it in the video, but the size of stuff is very specific. Also, if you go under the grid, the gravity will be a little messed up. But the size of everything matters. So the particle distance, if you're making something very small, if the particle distance is still set to 20, you're not going to have much density on that. So even if you go down to 1 or 0 on particle density, when something's so small, you're not going to get the fidelity that you would if something was so large and going down to 1. The scaling in Marvel is very finicky. That's why I always recommend going off of the avatar. And I believe going larger is better than going smaller. Is that true? It might be the other way around. I always get confused. But be careful on the particle distance and the size. Let's see what the particle distance does look like. Yeah, because you're very small, so even going to 5, you can't get that much resolution. And if you go too large, going down to 1, 0. Let me just pop in an avatar to confirm. That was the other way around, that's why. Okay, yeah, particle distance, your size is fairly good. Sometimes I would fake it and just make it larger. If something like that is causing issues. That's why I also recommend doing basic shapes, just seeing how it go before adding detail to make sure everything is correct. The one comment I had on yours was how you have it stitched here. If you simulate it, it's pulling in on itself there. That's because where this is stitched in. So you're stitching this line into this line. Was it yours? Oh, it was this line into here. No, which line's up? Oh crap, I forget who it was. That was yours. But somebody didn't have the size here match up with what is stitched in. So it kept eating in on itself. So you have to be careful of that. And it does. But they lined up. But it was somebody that, sorry, I can't remember. I look at them all and I can't remember whose is whose. But just make sure when these are lined up that they stitch in correctly. I think yours might actually be backwards. Yeah, there's something backwards there. That's why. What did you even comment? Yeah. So yeah, your problem with the particle distance, I believe. Yeah, you just make it large, double the size, and the particle distance should be fine. Trying to see where you have stitched on here, because something seems reversed here too. So be careful on your stitching. It's always nice to move it around and see what's wrong. Something seems backwards here, so be careful. Like I said there. Yeah, you have the patch. At least you got it going. This is the basic idea of the class. This is as much as I require. Just I would like to see people understanding, making it so they know what they're doing, and you'll learn it from there. As long as you know the basics, you could learn a lot quicker, in my opinion. Let me open up the next one. Scarf. All right. I'll do it a little darker. That's not the fabric, that'll be fine. Yeah. I just use something so it pops from the character. I think you did a good job. So yeah, the assignment to this is just more or less understanding the folds, like I always said. But it came out nice. So good job. This was, yeah. So I think it was really just that particle distance. The size of the mesh when you start has to be a little bit bigger. Should be fine. I didn't have the file for this, but you did submit stuff. Math looks good. I think from the previous notes I said about other students, watch these peaks up here. This I always have somebody that has this. I thought I got away with it this time, but be careful on making points like this, unless you're going for that kind of silhouette and shape on the mask. But normally they're cut out just in a circle. I try to get more folds on the neck and stuff like that. Otherwise, it looked like it fit pretty well. Yeah, I would try to get more folds on the top of the head and even in the bottom. I didn't go over the iron brush yet. Up here, the steam brush. I would recommend not using it for this class. It makes things a lot easier. So that's the reason I would say not use it. But once you learn the basics using this, you'll be better using it when you have correct mesh to begin with. It'll just make time go by faster for you, so you can clean up things a little bit easier. But if you get the correct base down there, it'll be a lot better to use that. And if you just use that defaultly, you're gonna have junky mesh beforehand, and then you're just trying to cover up the problems. But yeah, looks good. So that's the only thing. I would try to just give a little bit more folds, and on the top and the bottom, just try to do it. Just viewing the tension mask in the viewport in here will help. I recommend using that a lot. Cool. I think that covers everybody, but I really want to find that one person. Was it Nicholas? How did I check Nicholas's? That wasn't Nicholas's. Maybe it was Nicholas's. Maybe it was Nicholas's. So this and this, they're different sizes. Sorry, I'm trying to remember who it was. Destroying. Yeah, so this line is where it stitches into. So this line, half of this line is stitched into there. So let me reopen this. should have sucked it. I thought it was weird. There's somebody, I opened up a file today, and this line was way thinner than where it was stitching into, or vice versa, and it was just sucking up on itself. So I don't remember whose it was. I loaded up everybody's, and I thought I had it coming. Oh, no. I'm going to say no. Danny. Let me load up Danny's really quick. I'm just going to do this really quick, and then we'll go over it, though, next week's assignment. So I'll be on everything. Danny's, yeah, so I'm not going insane. So where this is stitching in, this one is stitching into this line. You could tell that this, no, that's stupid. This line from this vertex to this vertex is a lot shorter than this line. So when you simulate it, it's getting pulled in, basically like elasticity, because it doesn't know how to translate that. So if you eyeball it, it'll be a little bit better, but I would try to avoid doing stuff like that. So yeah, that was it. Let me go over week 3. So week 3 is where the fun starts. So we're gonna go over, the first video is gonna go over, is very basic. It's going over the avatar setup. I don't use the avatar setup unless I really need to. Some people like to set it up in the very first thing they do, and they have it going for when they create everything for that character. That's a personal preference, and it depends how many you want to add the dots and how many you don't need. It's up to you. I like to throw this out in the class because this is an introduction to the program, and this just gives you more stuff for your arsenal to use how you would like. So that's something, it's up to you if you want to use. Sometimes I would make it for like, when you watch the video, you'll understand. I use it sometimes for headbands or belts or pants. Sleeves I don't do it for because I'm really comfortable on just making the shirt and just simulating letting it fall on the arm and then stitching it together. It saves some time, but also takes some time to create. So it's up to you. If you're going to use that avatar for years on end, it's probably better to make a very intense one of these avatar setups, so you could just keep reusing the same one. It's up to you. And then finally, we'll get to making clothing on a female. I do the female before I do the male because the female is a little bit easier than the male. The male, I put a little bit more time into the pants, showing different techniques out. That's week 4. Week 3 is the female, which the dress is fairly easy to do, which I'll also show an alternate way to make the dress in the following week's video. But this time it's only one way to do it, but feel free to make it however you want. And then the shirt, I just want to show on how the straps go around the breast and how they cause issues on how you create the avatar when you make an avatar, and how that could cause issues on when you make Marvelous clothing. So keep stuff in mind. But overall, that week should be fun. Feel free to do my videos step by step, or take whatever you want to make on any avatar you want, character you want, but just make sure it falls in the same scale size of the avatar in Marvelous, so your particle distance is correct. Besides that, that pretty much covers everything. Somebody was asking about, the wind. Well, I kind of brought up the wind on something. I forget what, but I'll show an old thing I was making. I think it in 2013. Marvelous. This is the Z-Pack file. Yeah. Jacket pose. This is 2013, I believe. Yeah, but I updated then. Avatar, delete avatar. So this is when I took the wind feature. Is this the light? Yeah, this is the light. So if you go up to display, show wind controller. I'm going to turn off light controller. So you have the wind controller on here. You can also go to scene. You have a wind controller on here. You can activate it. It's off right now. If you click it on, it'll be on. Same with, I think light even has it where you have an option on and off. So I was just posing this character, and I just wanted to get the jacket to have some life to it. Instead of using the W, holding W and pinning them up and trying to get the flow, I just ended up doing it where I put the wind control on. You could change turbulence to strength to give some life. Turbulence is, so it's not a consistent airflow. It'll give a little bit more life to the wind. So that's how I get some life to it. Sometimes I'll put this on, like if you're going to do props or even on a jacket or pants, if you want some life to it that isn't just static drapery, you can put this on very subtly and it'll give a little bit of life to your clothing as you're making it. I don't cover this in my videos, I don't believe, but the option is there. Feel free to use it when you want to, but I don't use it that often, but it does give a little bit more life to things. That would be the one thing I want to just include on the video, on the class. Let me pull this over. I meant to find this out. Yeah. Let me sign into my thing while I have you, if I can find it. Last time I looked for it, I couldn't find it so fast. Pinterest. But yeah, like I said, Pinterest is really useful for me for keeping stuff in, finding stuff that I need, even though I couldn't find this last. Oh, this one. There it is. So this one, I should send that in the class, but I'll send it out here either way. I don't know if everybody has access to the link when I send it out in the chat, or you have to actually type it in. But I recommend this video because this is the knot I make. They show it. It looks complex here. Obviously, it's not in English, but after you take this course, you should be able to follow along and understand what they're doing. Basically, they're adding internal lines, cutting stuff up, faking it a little bit, and then they stitch stuff together just to get the fold. Where did it go? Like right here. So they're just getting this, and it's all just gonna fold up in itself. They're stitching specific sides, just like parts to parts. So you still get the folds here, but it's all cinched in on itself. I recommend watching this if you're gonna keep using Marvelous and creating stuff. This is easier technically. Technically, this is harder than making a knot in Marvelous, but it won't eat in itself. It will keep the form. But technically, it's harder just because of how you got to know what's stitching into what when you create it. But you'll see there's a lot of fudgery happening, but it comes out nice in the end, and it feels like a tied up knot shirt. This is one of the better videos I found for something like this. And, they'll go over other features and stuff like that. But yeah, let me close that. So thanks for everybody showing up. It's 2 minutes to the hour. Like always, thanks for joining, Holly and Kevin. And thanks to everybody for turning in their assignments. If you want more depth feedback on anything, just always include it in include your assignment. Just ask questions there, and I'll answer them as I go through the class. I try to cover them all, and if I didn't answer it correctly, feel free to re-ask the question and yell at me or tell me I didn't do a good enough job on reviewing your assignment or answering your question. But I try to. Other than that, that should be all. And thank you, everybody. Good night. Thank you. Also in the following class, at the very week 5, there's no questions. I have time at the end. If anybody has any questions about portfolio, industry advice or stuff like that, feel free to ask that too. You could also ask it throughout the weeks too, and I'll answer when I have free time. But yeah, that's it. Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye. Dun, dun, dun. I just wait for everybody to sign off before I end it. Adios.